Hey.
Oh, we actually. I thought it was like a prop.
We all sat there. We're like, are we?
They have the kale pesto. Yeah. Please.
The avocado toast.
Shout out to Jesus.
Can I have what he just had? Yeah. Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah.
Breakfast of champions. You know?
I'll do the same thing. I'll just stay on with everybody.
Be the weirdo. A mango and avocado salad. Now that I've got this table full of wonderful black luminaries, we're here to solve American soccer one piece of spaghetti at a time. So let's go backwards. And how did you get into the game in the first place? Like, who were sort of like your inspirations coming up as a kid? Like,
Made you want to play soccer?
yeah.
To be honest, I looked up to growing up Allen Iverson, man.
Yeah.
That was my biggest role model. I know it's kind of total 360. It's a different sport, but I don't know, just the way he played the game, the way he's so competitive, and he had such a big heart. And, you know, it wasn't an easy upbringing for him, but he found a way to kind of carve an avenue out of that. So I kind of looked up to him a lot growing up. I know it's kind of weird, but it was a big role model for him.
That actually makes plenty of sense. So, like, what made you first want to like pursue? What made you first think that you could do soccer professionally, like make a career out of it, rather than just like a hobby or just?
To be honest, I know everybody says this, but I never thought about doing anything else. You know, I started playing really young, and I got to go to that residency program down in Bradenton, Florida, and just from there, I mean, obviously college was a thought, but I just always dreamed and envisioned going pro. And my parents were against it. You know, they wanted me to go to school and go that route, but I ended up convincing them, and I've been doing all right ever since.
Wonder, has anyone ever had the story like, yeah, my parents absolutely thought that my career in professional sports was the thing to do. Like, yeah, college? No. Go kick that ball around. I'm sure that's going to lead to like millions of dollars down the road. Like, yeah, you got it. Yeah. So, Lynn, what about you? Like, growing up, like, who were you looking up to?
Yeah, I was actually looked up to Marion Jones pre-drug scandal. I kind of went to soccer a different route. I played when I was 5, but I also ran track. And I actually thought I was going to run track in college. I wasn't being recruited for soccer at all, being from Fresno. It's a small town. Like, people just don't really go there to look at soccer players. So I was like, you know what? I guess I'll just run track. But had more of a passion for soccer. Somehow Pepperdine, I went to college, they saw me, and from there, like, I realized that I wanted to be pro. That's not, I didn't
not
really
the typical story.
Yeah, not
but
the
it's
typical story
interesting
at
that
all.
both of you guys like had sort of heroes in sport, but neither one of you had would have a specific sort of soccer hero that made you look at the screen and was like, yeah, that's it. Like, that's what I want to do.
Yeah, Marion Jones, she killed it. She was the best of the best at the time, and everything she did. She was like the fastest, the best long jumper, and she just crushed everybody. And I was like, I want to be that. Like, I want to be somebody who's just outstanding and the person to look at. Growing up, too, people would be like, you guys look alike. I was like, yes.
So as fans, like, what brought you guys to the game, like, sort of as fans? What was the spark of your interest?
Oh, I played from the time I was 4. My dad grew up playing football, and he asked if I wanted to play football or soccer when I was 4. Yeah. I said soccer. And my heroes were Marco Echeverri and Jaime Moreno.
Oh, you know you're talking to a Rebels fan right now, right? Like, I'm an old Metro Star fan back in the day. Like, if there are 2 players that I can't stand, it's Echeverri and Jaime Moreno.
I thought they were the coolest people in the world, man. And then 98 World Cup, France won, and there was this black dude who was really fast on it, and it was Thierry Henry. And I liked him in the 98 World Cup, and he became my favorite player. Now, I woke up yesterday and watched Arsenal, at 7:30 in the morning, and I don't know how I got to this point.
Thierry Henry and Arsenal are a lot of black folks' gateway drug, man. Because I have a running theory, and I'm not completely sure it's not scientific, but black people are genetically predisposed to loving Arsenal.
Yeah, man.
And I think it's
like
because
a lot of Chelsea too, because they had so many Africans. But
Right,
it's always
right.
Arsenal and Chelsea.
Yeah, Arsene Wenger was like one of the first managers to really make an effort to sort of integrate the Premier League.
I'm the guy who's did not like soccer at all. Football guy. Nothing about soccer is cool, it's corny, all that stuff. And 2002 World Cup, it's funny because I came here, I went out, watched it. That was my first time really seeing the game. And it was one of the African countries. I feel like it was Senegal. And I was just looking at the guys. I was like, damn, Diesel, And then I was like, because I've always thought like football guys are like the best guys, like this guy.
Right.
Then I started like, well, hold on a second, 45 minutes, nonstop, 15-minute break, 40. That's crazy. Like these are the best athletes. And then it was the Thierry Henry effect.
Yeah.
And I remember there was one day I came here in 2000, and I saw him playing. I just saw this team, Arsenal, play. Crazy, this dude. Thierry Henry was like gliding across, and I actually made that comparison. I said he was like Iverson. It's crazy. That guy right there said that's how I won our identity. So yeah, that when I've always kind of seen those comparisons, and now I pay more attention to soccer, global football than anything else. Mm. And I'm not saying it's because you're here, but he came in, was it 2007, you, Beckham?
Yeah, way back.
What was that? And somebody from the Galaxy. There's two players that most African Americans I talk to still identify in soccer. Freddie and Jozy.
Freddie, oh boy.
Freddie and
that's my
Jozy.
peak.
I still have people ask me to this day. I went to Detroit recently, like, oh, who's the one guy playing the national team? Jozy, but does the other kid still play? Yeah. Freddie.
I'll still fight somebody over Freddie slander. Don't slander Freddie in my presence, man.
Yeah.
I played with his little brother growing up.
Fro?
Yeah, Fro.
Did you buy his mixtape though?
Huh?
Did you get it? Did you get Fro's mixtape?
No, but I heard he got like that Christian rap, right? This could not be a Fro. It could be a Fro. I mean, Freddie was like this mystical figure growing up because he was like supposed to be my age. But
Nah, don't do my man like that, man. Come on.
no, that's
Freddie
not where
was
I'm
his age.
going.
He's 27 years old. Stop it.
He was supposed to be my age, but like he never was at any tournaments or anything like that. He was always down in Bradenton.
Yeah.
Like, where's your big brother? Like, you know, he's somewhere else playing. Yeah, you heard he's like in Italy playing all this stuff. He was like the first like jet-setting young superstar kid that I can really.
That man had
remember.
a Campbell's soup commercial.
Yeah.
He was eating fresh at Subway with Pele, and people got the nerve to slander him. Like, have you ever eaten a turkey and cheese with Pele? No. Show some respect. See, like Greg, I started playing. My parents put me in soccer when I was 4. From North Jersey. And North Jersey soccer, the only team that you would think existed was AC Milan. It's like, so everything was like AC Milan, AC Milan, AC Milan, Italian national team. As like a kid, World Cup comes around, like Baggio was my first like favorite player. Then I guess MLS started, I was 13, MLS started. My first favorite MLS player was Rob Johnson. Like the coolest black dude, was like so cool to us on our team. Cause even like as a youth, the town that I grew up in was like fairly diverse. And our team, like say if there was 20 guys on the team, there would be 5 black guys on the team. Like our youth program somehow ended up reflecting the community in general.
I grew up in Boca, so I grew up around a lot of kids that played soccer that were white, white Americans. So it wasn't really, like I grew up in like a slum where I'm playing with a bunch of like inner city kids and nothing like that. So that was kind of the norm for me, growing up playing around a bunch of young white kids and learning the game. So I played on the free team. Everybody plays on that free, unorganized team for a little while. And then I was 8 and I got scouted kind of like by this coach who was from Austria. And his name was Joseph Schultz, and he saw me playing in the park and he was like, you should come to my academy. It was an expensive academy. You had to pay like, I don't know, $200 a month or whatever, but my dad was like, can't do that, So, I'd love to bring him, and he's like, oh, I can bring your son to a World Cup. I can make him to a World Cup soccer player, and this, that, and the third. And my dad's like, why not? Roll the dice or whatever. So I ended up going to his academy for free and getting to play there. A lot of the other parents didn't like it, but I get to go for free, and I got to hone my skills, and it was a good look for me.
I grew up playing with a lot of Hispanic, like Latin people. But yeah, when I would go to travel for games and stuff, it was predominantly like white people. I was probably the only person on my team, and then if I looked over at the other team, there might be 1 or 2 other black people. Like Jozy said, you kind of just get used to it. You're like, all right, well, this is another day of soccer, and I stand out, but all right. But I think my situation is a little different. I'm obviously mixed. My mom's white, and my dad's black. So I felt like I was playing a sport where I didn't really fit in, but I didn't really felt like I fit in a lot of places in life to begin with. Like, I wasn't black enough and I wasn't white enough. So I would go, I'd be like, all right, this is just another day of life, and somewhere that people don't look like me, but a lot of people don't look like me anyways, so.
I remember, and I'm from suburbs, DC, but I remember, middle class area, only black kid on team until I think I was 10 or 11. I started playing DC United's academy teams, and I think we started like 8 black kids when I was like 12 or 13. It was just a complete different vibe. It was like the blackest team I've ever seen. Yeah, like still to this day, you know. And but it didn't like a lot of African American kids either. It's all like, you know, kids of immigrants from like Africa or West Indies or something like that. And so my experience growing up is going to tournaments, like wake up in the morning, driving to tournaments, stuff like that, and being like the only black kid on like 10 fields. But I didn't really think about it at length or anything until after the fact. Like after I stopped playing, I was like, that was actually kind of weird. You know, like it was just. But that's the world. You know, if you're playing soccer, you know, and you're black, I mean, it's gonna be like that. Especially, I think, at lower levels and when you're younger and there's no real incentive to get the best players.
So did you notice like sort of an increase in diversity as skill level rose?
Yeah, it's like anything else. When coaches are getting paid more, you know, and when there's more at stake, the better teams are gonna be more diverse, you know, and then you go pro and you got players all over the world. For me, the problem is just like when there's nothing, when you're just playing for fun, that's where you see like a lot of the segregation or just not letting people in who don't have the financial means or you know aren't in your social circles because of their race or class or whatever.
Right. It always seems to be like one of the biggest barriers to sort of like diversity in American soccer is like that pay-for-play system that we're still relying on. Like you see a lot of that changing now, like thank God, because there's MLS clubs have like their own academies that are going down to like 8 or 9-year-old kids, you know, that are getting in for free. It's like that seems like a good, like sort of progressive move that's like bringing kids in, you know.
Kind of hitting on all the points you guys are mentioning here is, I think there's a lot of talent in their city that's not being tapped into. And one of my big challenges is a perception of if you're doing something in your city, it's charity. It's a fun thing. Come by, you come with our kids, take some pictures, put in your annual report, but no real development. And I'm not cool with that. So that's just one, it's my experience. Playing at a very high level, I think what the kids really need is that exposure. You know what I mean? You have this soccer system, and it takes this kid who I've observed some things about the kid that has access to the opportunity. When after they go to a good school, they've got transportation to good facilities, they get 2 hours in, they get their homework, they get 9 hours of sleep, and they're back at it again. That inner city kid, he's got a whole bunch of other stuff going on. And on one level, soccer wants the result of what they know can come in inner cities that has been defined by all the other sports. I sometimes question whether the time, the energy, and resources that would take to get that is the commitment there. That means you got to think about some of the traditional barriers that you have in inner city. You're going to have to think about how to get around that. So we're trying to teach them about like a commitment and sacrifice. And I think you can do it in soccer as well. That pay-to-play barrier has got to be addressed.
Congratulations on your 100 caps.
Thank you, appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Yeah, congratulations.
It's a bit surreal, you know, it creeps up on you fast. I mean, it's not a process where you kind of remember each game. Obviously I do, but it feels like it was yesterday that I started. So, yeah.
Do you guys think that there's any sort of specific advantage that like soccer would have over other sports that like our community traditionally embraces? Like, you know, we're traditionally basketball, football. Do you think there's anything about soccer in particularly that like our communities can benefit from that like maybe other sports aren't really offering kids?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's an international sport. Like, you know, I remember my first day playing in college, like going to preseason. I was like, I can't believe I'm about to like room with a kid from England and another kid from Northern Ireland. You know, and you know, I roomed with a kid from Serbia. Like, I have nothing to show for playing soccer 18 years except like one knee, you know, and like scarred and stuff. I don't have anything to show for it, but I have experiences, you know, and I have friends from, you know, all over the world. If you're not going to be Lynn or Jozy or something like that, you know, you're not going to have anything to show for it. Like, what's better than that? You know, and I think that's one thing that soccer has over almost any other sport.
And I think like soccer just like it brings communities together. Like it's a cheap sport where I don't know how many times you guys have been with people and they're like, let's go play a pickup game of soccer. And it might be like in my college, the water polo players would come out and the basketball players, and we would just have a huge game of soccer because it's something that everybody can do. Mm-hmm. it's not easy, but relatively easy for like if you want to, like it's fun and you get to just laugh and have a good time. So I think that's something that soccer brings that not every other sport does.
So water polo wasn't working out for you?
Yeah,
That wasn't happening.
I'm pretty dense. I kind of just sink.
I would drown so fast.
So what do you see? Really, just go on camera and say black folks can't swim? Like
I'm saying I
Come on, man.
personally can't swim well.
I still can't swim. I'm still struggling.
Not that I need to. I'm not gonna go out on a boat anytime soon. You know. I played soccer, basketball, ran track growing up. You know, basketball was my favorite sport until we hit middle school and everyone started growing, and I was still, 4'10", 4'11". I was like, oh, it's not gonna work out, And
it's hard to change those dreams.
yeah, and then and I adjusted and I started, concentrating more on soccer as I realized that I was not gonna be LeBron or something like or something like that.
Could have been Nate Robinson though.
Could have, yeah.
That's not the best example, though.
He meant Isaiah Thomas.
Yeah, right?
Right, yeah.
I don't think I'm ever gonna get like used to people like reaching out and like DMing me on Instagram and being like stuff like that. But it's funny that you.
That's a different conversation.
But like no. But a girl actually just did that and was saying she's like, "Thank you so much for playing. There's not many of us like that of color out there representing soccer. Like, thank you so much. I look up to you. You're an inspiration. Like, just keep playing." And it was really nice. And I think sometimes we play and we don't think about it because it's just something that we've gotten used to. And you're like, all right, it's another day. I'm playing soccer. And then you get little messages like that and you're like, wow, this is actually such a unique situation. And I do inspire people. And so I know it's really cool.
Like you touched on when I go to places like FC Harlem at the time I went, and you play. I got my 100th cap, and I kind of got to look back on all the places I've been able to travel to, within the states, whether it's for camps, appearances, or whatever. And you don't take the time in the moment to understand it, but a lot of people reach out. A lot of young black kids reach out, like I want to be like you one day, or you inspire me. And it means a lot. Like I said, you get caught up in it sometimes, and you don't get time to kind of sit back and look at the effect that you have on a lot of young kids. But it's there. It's definitely in the back of my mind, and it's something that I hold a lot of pride in. And to know that there's a young black kid, out there somewhere that wants to make it, whether it is an MLS or World Cup or represent the United States. And even if that doesn't happen, the fact that he has big dreams, he's going to land somewhere, where he's going to be happy, which I think is important.
So now sort of bringing it forward, right? Like American soccer, we all know in our lifetime is like grown exponentially, right? And when I say American soccer, I mean from the national team, level of quality, Major League Soccer, just fandom of the sport in general, right? But somehow in America, there seems to be like this cultural gap where we're not seeing that increased show when it comes to coaching staffs, when it comes to front offices, when it comes to media representations. Like, what do you think are the barriers that are keeping black folks, men or on the women's side, Lynn, that's keeping black men and women out of the coaching ranks at like a higher level?
At the end of the day, man, it's sad. It is what it is. But, people try to sweep it under the rug. But racism is alive. It's alive and well. And so in all aspects of life, you're going to encounter it. It's going to be there. And until that's addressed on a greater scale, you're always going to have these type of instances, man. And you're always going to be talking about these type of things.
And I think it just like ties back into like there wasn't a lot of black people playing. Therefore, I think people think like, well, what do you know about the game? Like, what makes you qualified?
Yeah, because like what makes it BS, the idea was like, well, there's not a lot of black coaches and not a lot of black, executives because black people don't play soccer. Like, no, have you looked on the field?
Yeah.
Like just African Americans, let alone like international players. I think it's like 12% in MLS alone, right? Like 12% of MLS is African American specifically, and that's in line with the general population.
That's higher than I expected.
Right.
Way higher than I expected.
But
Yeah.
Look, at the end of the day, though, bad manners talking about mouth.
You're on camera, Jozy.
I'm gonna tell you something. I know, right? Fresno people bougie, man. I know. But at the end of the day, though, in anything, man, sports, soccer, black people, we like 500 years behind, man. You know what I mean? People always like, oh, there's not a lot of black people doing this, not a lot of black people doing that. There's a reason for that. Y'all got a head start. I mean, y'all was running things,
you know, I think racism is such a funny topic because white people love to tell you to get over it. Right. You know, stop grieving, stop complaining. It's like, oh, come on, we heard enough of that. Nah, you know what I mean? You were hanging, burning, beating, raping black people 500 years. So when we ready to stop grieving, we gonna let you know. You know what I mean? You can't tell us to do that. And so many things, man. You know, so many ways to look at it. But I think it's really hard for especially white kids now, because obviously they weren't part of that. But at the same time, as we're suffering for it, they are too. And it's something that definitely needs to be addressed, man.
Did you guys even know that MLS had like an on-paper coaching diversity initiative, like in place, like sort of like the NFL Rooney Rule?
I had no clue.
Yeah, like did you guys even know that was a thing that existed?
No.
Yeah, like just like the Rooney Rule, like MLS teams are required to interview like minority candidates for like coaching, technical director positions, like youth coaching positions. Like it's required. But I don't even think most fans even realize that.
I mean, Jozy was right. Like it doesn't have to be MLS. Whatever, it's about power, right? And when you're talking about the people actually making decisions and the people who are actually, you know, profiting, it's going to be white people. It's going to be mostly men, the same as always. And like, just because it's sports and it's a nominal meritocracy on the field doesn't make the rest of the corporation any different than any other company.
There's so much stuff that we do off the field in the sense of leadership development stuff, but we were talking about this the other day, like, all that stuff is still secondary if you don't have an understanding of who you are, because that's going to be the first thing a lot of you are attacked on. You know what I mean? I grew up in an all-white community version. Me and my sister were the only black kids from first grade all the way to high school. And then also having parents who basically were like trying to put me in an environment to make it better for us from an educational standpoint, but also think about it where my parents were like, there's no fighting. So when you get called the N-word, you better figure out some other way to deal with that. Where did that aggression get channeled? Football. You didn't know why I hit you extra hard that day. Because somebody says something to you, you know what I mean? And that's why I think to your piece, what you're saying, it's so important that in addition to having those positions of people in power, someone's got to go in the community and get that. That's what I try to do. Whether it's Commissioner Garber comes in, the players, everybody, anytime I get a call, I always ask people to come to Harlem. Not bringing kids down to Bryant Park. I won't do it. I got to come to Harlem. Why? Because that's about sending a message that where they're at is important. Where they're at is valuable. If you want to be successful, you got to have that confidence to know who you are first. You know what I mean?
Along with sort of like the financial barrier, there's also like that perception barrier of blackness, like in a majority white sport. Eddie Johnson is like one of my all-time favorites. Like he did a great interview a few years ago when he was up in Seattle talking about how hard it was for him, even at the professional level, to like get along with teammates because he didn't have anything that he related to them on a personal level. He was saying he was friends with more Seahawks than he was Sounders. And how coming up, he had a hard time with a lot of his coaches because like they couldn't appreciate or understand like his sort of brashness and his attitude and his like that inner fight that came from being from the hood. And I think that's like a huge block that comes from like the lack of minority coaches. You know, coaches like you who are coming from a place where no, it's like, no, I know that kid. I understand that kid. I understand who he is and why he is. And yeah, coaching is such a huge barrier to like really diversifying the game further.
I was a suburb kid, you know, like middle class. I was playing middle class, upper middle class people the whole time. Had new vapors every year. You know what I mean? Like I could pay for it.
Good life, huh?
Who invited you, man?
Yeah. You know, like I had, you know, I was playing ODP, and that was astronomical prices that I even have to think about. And that's just to be on the field, let alone all the traveling and stuff that takes care. That's because, you know, I was lucky growing up. I didn't play with that many poor kids growing up. And I didn't, you know, and when you talk about poor people in the United States, and you know, it's generally going to be people of color. You know, to talk about soccer is to talk about the United States. You know, there's no, I don't see any difference between the two.
So it seems like everyone agrees with like the idea that like America's true and like inherent and implicit racism, it just carries right over into soccer. So it's just sort of like par for the American course.
Carries in everything. Yeah. I mean,
I think it's like it's crazy to me that like I'm from Fresno, which is not even the hood. Like it's a farm kind of town where like immigrants go, and it's crazy to me that it was hard for me to find somebody who would recruit me for college. Like, I went to Pepperdine and they said it was easy for us to find somebody, a white person from Iceland, than it was to find you. And I lived 3 hours up the road. Like, just because you didn't want to take or a lot of colleges don't want to take the time to go drive into the cities or into places where soccer isn't, I guess, this huge sport. Like, I was lucky enough that I got to go to, my parents had enough money to put me into soccer, and then I got out and got to go to all these college showcases. Like, I'm lucky enough. But if you go into these cities and you just watch kids play, you could be like, they're athletic. I can mold them into a soccer player if that's what you want to do with them. But half of them are like, if you don't have the skill set by the age of blah, 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 we're just going to throw you to the side. And you're like, you can learn these things. Like,
because really, I mean, there aren't that many people who are actually going to make it. That you're actually going to, like, that you invest in, you know, your time and money as a club or coach or something like that. Yeah. That's going to ever give you anything. Like, you know, like, most kids suck. Most kids are gonna suck, you know, and but they like soccer because, you know, of the community that it had. The problem is if you're not going to turn into a Jozy or Lynn or someone like that, you know, then what's the point? The point is, like, you're still, you know, there's still something to be had by helping this kid through. The next Messi's not coming or anything like that, probably, you know, so, like,
I imagine America's Messi was probably already born but stopped playing when he was 16 because he didn't see what the point was. I think a lot of, like, good players sort of get lost. Like, a lot of the good players get lost because they aren't scouted because of where they come from, you know?
So we've had a kid that I've known since 9 years old that's been really, really good. Everybody says, oh, he's good. Took him out to Minnesota a couple of years ago, gets selected right away. The best kid out of all the kids that were coming from, even some of the MLS academies that were trying out for that school. But this is the big issue. How are they going to come to an inner city kid who has a, you know, single mother, 3 siblings, lives on 125th Street, and ask him to pay $55,000? Right. It was crazy. Like, here's the letter of you being accepted. Here's the letter saying you're one of the best players, finally about to be in, and then saying you don't have the money, and then even saying to me, like, we'll call your partner Chelsea to pay for it. Like, it was just all this real shadiness. Sent him over to Gachi. Now he's in the system. He's killing it, doing well. But he's one kid. It's very hard to get one. My thing is, there's so many more.
What's the one album that you can take away to make themselves proper people? Go on.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah.
Jesus, man. No, it's
let me see what I'm listening to right now.
New Slaves on repeat. That's it.
Right? Oh, new Sampha album. Process, his first album.
So you want people to get all emotional and so they process and
get sad.
Yeah, you gotta cry a little bit.
Start thinking about lost love, man. Yeah. Cry a little bit, it's okay.
The thing is, though, in America, soccer doesn't represent the come up, though. Especially to the urban kid, you know? It's not the dream, like making out the hood and getting that paycheck, buying mama a house. You know, so you're in a place where it's not like Brazil, where kids grow up with the Neymar shirt and they're playing in the streets. It's a little bit different. Kids in America, they see sports also as an opportunity. A lot of inner city kids, like, you know, yeah, they love it, but what can get me out the hood? What can get me a better opportunity? And so I think that's also something that, you know, you have to overcome. It's kind of an obstacle for young soccer in urban cities, you know, because, you know, Eddie Johnson, a good friend of mine, he'd tell you, growing up where he grew up, soccer wasn't a thing, but, you know, he loved it, he had a passion for it, but it's a rare thing. Because even if you want to chase that dream, in the hood, you probably thinking, you know, there's no end product here for me in terms of taking care of the family forever and, you know, doing those type of things. So I think that's also an issue. People always, all right, this is just my opinion, I don't know, I could be totally wrong, but you take LeBron back to whenever he started playing sports. And he was like, Ma, I want to play soccer. She's like, nah, you're not playing soccer, right? All right, because there's no model for him. Who would he have looked up to as a young black man trying to come up playing soccer? Who was LeBron going to look up to? That is plastered everywhere, that, you know, makes the type of money that can change his life, that is an example.
Now,
there isn't one.
That gets me to the next thing, like sort of like the branding idea. Look what they're doing with the marketing that's going with Pogba. Like, that's amazing, and it's black as hell. Like, it's incredibly black, high budget, amazing stuff. It's catching eyes. People see it. And it's making him a star. Like obviously he's a great player, but it's making him a star, and it's sort of like a shift in soccer branding that I don't remember seeing anything like the way they're pushing Pogba.
Make sure the person who you're marketing to is in that room, because that's the other thing I've noticed is like everyone thinks they have this understanding of the inner city and what they need to do here or market something cool, and they're not the ones that live in that community. And I've sat in these meetings sometimes, I'm the one quiet there, and I'm like looking at these people with these titles, these big uniform suppliers, and they're just describing our community. I'm like, and I'm the only one here. This doesn't make any sense. And you're going to tell me what you're going to do in our community. That don't work. Okay, you got the trap music and everything, but like that doesn't work. Now, if people understand, you know when you're pushing it too hard and when it's real. And there's a way to do it that can be done. I've seen it done right.
Well, the way to have it done right is to have us do it.
Have us do it.
Like, yeah, that's the difference between, and it's something, Greg, you just wrote about, the difference between real diversity and tokenism.
I did write about this.
I read, brother.
New York Times. New York Times.
Like that's the difference. Like real diversity is having us talk to us to bring us to the game, whereas tokenism is taking the things that you believe you think we're interested in, or like, hey, if we get so and so to dab, black folks will show up to the game, and it doesn't really work out that way. Like that's not how it works.
Why are things done this way? What is that board meeting like to you come to this conclusion for a Pogba, but you come to this conclusion for an Eddie Johnson? You know what I'm saying? I think that's where you take the next step. And like I said before, this thing, what we're doing is great, but it's a sign of where we are. You know, we're still, in a process of building and getting better. The next step is in incorporating different sides.
Yeah, because it's not about solutions now. First, you even have to say out loud that there are things to even address.
One thing I think about like Pogba, but also Thierry Henry, like, I mean, a lot of black international players. It's like if you look at them, I don't really think of them as any different than like basketball players in terms of how they carry their blackness and how they're cool. They're young people. They're like unapologetic, and I think they're allowed to be that way within the international game in a way that you don't really see specifically from marketing, but with black players in the United States, it's like it doesn't feel like you're allowed to be black. And if you're hood or whatever, then there aren't that many black people from the hood that play soccer and make it to these heights.
To be real, Jozy's interviews sometimes the shortness and the curtness of it connects to a lot of people in the city. We ain't saying a whole lot. So that's
we ain't having now. Next question.
He's like,
you know what I mean?
It was the whole thing. Like even when you want to touch and feel the player, you want to have. What do? Bring their lifestyle into popular culture. Let them see they're not special. They're not unique to just national team day.
Yeah, self-personalities.
They got to change that.
I like that.
Someone was watching the game the other day, and the best thing they talked about when they saw one of the Premier League's players score, it was their face. Their face was like, yeah, what's up? That's what was like, yo, did you see that face? That's what they were making a connect. They connected to that because that is the sort of face you would see in your city if someone just schools somebody on the court, talk a little, not mean to be the jersey necessarily or the bat, you know what I mean? So,
personality.
I want to see that part come out because it's here. I mean, the United States, the inner city, set the trends that everybody else in Japan and everybody else is following. Straight, so
yeah, U.S. sets the trend globally, and black folks set the trend in the United States.
And then soccer, it's being
and when soccer realizes that,
controlling
I think a lot of
like,
things will change.
Make no sense. My friends who want to attack MLS, like being there from 2000 to like now, man, it's changed so much. So like that's like we're not there yet, and we're saying there's still another phase. There's more, but like you got to acknowledge like so much that has happened. You know what I mean? That's what I'm saying. Like I actually have on my computer from 2006. MLS probably doesn't know this. I put a list of all the black players that were in the league. I have all their pictures. I have a separate file called Black Players MLS 2006.
You about to run like MLS COINTELPRO? What you doing?
Yeah, I was up in there doing. Yeah. I was up in there doing research. You went to the point like, logos. It is getting better. I just think there's still more to be done. It's never finished.
Like, I think you need conversation, but you need people who are willing to listen. Because I think there's people out there, they're like, oh, you'll sit down and have a conversation with them. And it's just like, and you're like, did you get anything that I said?
Or have your agenda with this, because you're making a key point. If you know you're being used on something, because I'm telling you, this is my always approach every morning. I know when I'm being used. And I'm not, when I'm used, I don't mean that negatively. I'm just saying, like, that's how life is. You get paid for, have your own agenda. Someone always tells me, you go to a meeting, if you don't bring an agenda, somebody will give you one.
Particularly as athletes that represent the United States, do you have any sort of obligation to speak about sort of like social issues or political issues?
Ladies first, man.
Go on.
It's nice in the sense that you have a platform to talk about issues. But like I said, we're joking, like I can't be the spokeswoman for all black people.
Right.
Like I don't know, at the end of the day, like I think everybody has their own opinion about what is going on. I feel like sometimes you say stuff and people don't actually want to hear what you have to say. Like they're not going to change their mind anyways. Like why?
Man, I'm like, here, I'm still trying to break in. Bro. I mean, it is what it is. I mean, you know, I got the games and all. No, I'm just playing. But yeah, like she said, it's a touchy subject, man. It's hard to, you know, it's hard to talk about politics with people. You know, everybody has a different view. It's a passionate topic, but I think that's the first step in terms of reaching, hopefully one day, reaching a place where everybody can kind of be okay with somebody else's opinion. You have to be. Right now, the country's so divided in a way that, you know, a country like the U.S., it shouldn't be. And that's because we haven't been listening to each other, you know, whether it be blacks and whites, whether it be, you know, Republicans, Democrats, whatever it is. We need to find a way, you know, peaceful way to sit down and kind of voice our differences. I know it sounds very cliche, but it needs to happen because things are going to get worse before they get better, and we don't want that. You know what I mean? Things have been bad already in this country before, and I think we live in the greatest country in the world. I think that, you know, 100%. You know, regardless of what you hear flying around, what other people say, I represented this country since I was 17 years old, 18 years old, and so I love it. But I think that conversation needs to happen. It's a strong conversation. It's an awkward one, but you know, it makes for a better tomorrow, for sure.
So like that's the phrase that we use when we talk about the national team, right? Is represent the country, you're representing the flag, the red, white, and blue. Particularly as African Americans, like what does that concept of represent the country like mean to you when you put the jersey on?
Diversity, being able to say that I look like part of the country that's not being represented half the time. Like I said, unique, I'm mixed, so I think I represent people that sometimes don't know where they fit in, and knowing that you can look at somebody and be like, they're representing me as that. So I think it's a unique situation or just an amazing situation where you like put your hand over your heart when you say the national anthem and you're touching the crest and you have the jersey on, and it's something that most people won't experience, but it's like, I can't even describe it, but it's such an awesome feeling knowing that you're going out there, people are looking up to you and being like, wow, she looks like me, I could do that. And that's what it means to me, at least.
And over the years, over all the games, the competitions, you know, I've been blessed to take part in. You know, the best part, I'll tell you, it's actually funny. It's not when we play games where it's pro-American crowds. I tell you, like when I'm playing in Gold Cups and we're playing against teams like, you know, Honduras or whatever, and El Salvador, whatever it is, and you're getting ready, you're lining up to the stadium. I think the beauty in that, there's so many El Salvadorians, there's so many people from different parts, and we're all representing America. A lot of people there, you know, are American citizens, and it says a lot about our country and the American dream, and the fact that people come here for a better life, for a better opportunity. Is it perfect? No, but I think the growing consensus is that, you know, if you want a chance, you want to be given an opportunity, even though it's not perfect and it can improve. America's a place to do that, and being able to represent that, and even if it's a small way, you know, means a lot. Coming from Haitian immigrants as well, when my parents came for a better life out here, you know, growing up in Haiti, they weren't going to have the opportunity that they had here. So, you know, I think it means a lot to me, and as we can see now that we're not perfect, I still think we're still ahead of a lot of places in some good ways.
At this time, I think America has a lot of flaws, but I still love America. I think there's a great opportunity here, and I think, yes, we still need to get more black people playing, and I think we still need to, we have a long way to go, but have we taken steps forward? Yes, and I think even soccer as a whole has taken steps forwards, even in my lifetime, to see how far it's come. It's going to take time. Like, the road to success isn't straight. Like, we're going to go like this. So after this, we'll be stronger as a nation, and hopefully a stronger soccer team for that.
So at the end of the day, then, the message is we going to be all right.
I have to believe that. Yeah.
So what was it that you would hope to see next, like specifically from this conversation? Like the fact that MLS is even doing this. What is it that you would like to see next?
Next, I'd like to talk to, I think it'd be cool if we had people that put this together, the people that run MLS HQ, and have these conversations so we can kind of get a peek into their world and they get a peek into ours. And I think that's how you make progress. We're kind of educating each other on things that we didn't know that was happening on the other side, and then coming to a collective conclusion. That's the next step. Obviously, everything's a process, and this is step one of it.